Well, hey, friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship Podcast. I'm Ty Evans. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you're having the best day ever. Super excited for our guest for this episode, Miss Tabitha Holland. Thank you so much, Tabitha, for agreeing to come on here and talk mules with me. Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. Well, like I was telling you before we hit record, you've been on my list for quite a long time. Just trying to get your schedule and my schedule to coordinate, and I'm glad we could finally line it up.
Me
So,
too. It's hard to get all that together with the traveling. The traveling throws a wrench in things for sure.
oh yeah, and I'm super annoying because my schedule is wild. So, anyways, thanks for dealing with me.
No problem at all.
Yeah, yeah. So, you just got back from Denver. How'd that go?
It went great, actually. We took 8 head of animals out there. We took 3 donkeys, 4 mules, and a horse. Good mule client of mine has got a half Percheron, half quarter horse, and we took him out for the Horseman's Challenge before it started. I'm kind of all over the place here, but Denver is unique in that they only want to let you in the show about a few hours before you show, which makes it really difficult with the amount of animals we bring. So, to
Mm.
circumvent that, we started applying to get in the Horseman's Challenge because that runs a couple days before the mule show. So, as long as we get accepted into the Horseman's Challenge, then that allows us to get all of our animals on the grounds, get all of our stuff unloaded, and then we just pick out a couple of the brokest mules to and kind of stumble our way through the Horseman's Challenge. But this is the second year we've done that. The first year we were very ill prepared because it's just not what we do. I mean, we mostly show. So the mules were very broke, so they did everything, but some of the stuff we just hadn't ever shown them or practiced. So this year we were a little more prepared for that, and had a lot better goes. And then because they take every kind of animal, my client wanted to bring her horse along, so we did that, and that was a really good time. But we had my husband placed up about 20th out of 80 some, which for what we do, we were pretty happy with that. And then we've kind of got a whole litmus things to work on for next year. So it's something we kind of want to dabble a little more in and get more involved in. So now we keep just bringing things home with us to practice and work on and get better at. So, but then to go back to your original question, as we got into that, we got into the show. This was the first ever fully ranch show for NASMA, which was a little bit different and also a little bit out of our comfort zone. But what I've really found, so many people think that our show mules only show. And as we've got into the Horseman's Challenge and these ranch events and so forth, we've really just kind of it's just verified what we've always known: a broke animal is a broke animal. So the same animal that just got done being the all-round winner at Congress doing driving and Western pleasure and all the show events was High Point Amateur Ranch Mule at Denver. So that same thing. So a broke animal is just a broke animal. So we really, it was an easy transition to move over to these ranch events. And the participation at Denver was great this year. They had, 15 and 20 in a lot of the classes, which are a lot bigger than their numbers have been. So I think it really shows, the ranch is growing in popularity, and we were happy to see those numbers out there and participate.
Man, that's cool. So I'm not familiar. What's the Horseman's Challenge there you're talking about?
It is a big obstacle challenge that they've invented. It really goes along the same lines of some of the extreme trail events in the arena that you've seen other places. But I think the rules are just a little bit at Denver. They really wanted a way to bring everybody together from all the different breeds in a team environment. So you'll work 2 different courses. There's 10 to 12 obstacles on each course, and it's judged. You get a time and also a horsemanship score. And it's pretty lax in its rules. Like you can ride two-handed and a shanked bit and some things like that. As long as it's humane, it's legal pretty much out there. And then, like I said, the judge gives you a horsemanship score, and then you're scored for each obstacle and then a time. So you can't dilly-dally a lot around. You've got to kind of move through the course, but still do it in a way that's, good for the animal and pleasing to the judge. So, but everything from, the basics of walking through pool noodles and picking up a slicker to they had to get off on a big wooden spool and get back on. Actually, they had to hula hoop and then get back on. So that through some of them. Um, just different things that might scare them in a ground tie. I'm trying to think some of the a little jump. Things that you would encounter. I mean, I thought they were pretty standard things that you would encounter that were really good for the mules to know. But if they hadn't seen anything, it could be really scary. But some of it was more horsemanship based, like loping a figure eight, and they kind of judge you on a simpler flying lead change. And then some of it was a little scarier. They had a drag, but it was a big stuffed shark on the end of a drag. So, but that didn't, most of them that drug things that did, they didn't care at all that
Mhm.
it was a drag or that it was a shark. So, but things like that. And then the second day they have a team challenge where 4 people attack a new course and you get to decide which 3 or 4 obstacles each person does. So that's really fun because then you can pick the best things that your mule or horse were good at and kind of team up and do
Oh,
it
that's
that way.
cool.
But it's a really fun event and it's not expensive. I think the whole thing with the stall costs 100 or $125 and just a really fun environment and a good challenge for your animal. And it's a good, I mean, like for us, it's great because we get in the pen one more time and let them see it before the show. But like I said, we took it a little more serious this year and plan to do some more homework for next year. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, you just keep learning. Like, all right, well,
for
let's go work on
sure.
this. You take it back to the drawing board,
Yes.
and heck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for some of my listeners that might not know you, Tabitha, maybe you could introduce you and your family, what you guys do, and
Sure.
talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. My husband and I both grew up in Iowa. I grew up in Southwest Iowa in a little town called Griswold. And my dad and grandpa both trained reining horses. And then kind of going up through 4-H, I really enjoyed the all round. So I rode everything and kind of started training horses when I was 11 or 12. They had a real nice 2-year-old project. 4-H was huge back then. So I came up through the 4-H program and started training and giving lessons then. And then I went to work for a horse trainer after high school, but my dad was bound and determined I was not going to be a horse trainer. So I eventually went to college, and then that's what brought us to Oklahoma. Is I got a good graphic design job here in Oklahoma, and that lasted about a year. And then September 11th happened, and they laid off everybody, and I just went back to training horses. So that's kind of what got us in this mess. But we were very young horse trainers and starting out, and it seemed like all we did training horses was chase down money, trying to get paid. And then I was still doing some graphic design work on the side, and a guy that I was doing graphic design work for had seen some of our horse win pictures on the dash of my truck. I was over there taking photos, and he said, "Hey, you guys train horses?" I said, "Yeah, that's mostly what we do." And he says, "Well, I've got this donkey." And I was like, "Well, we've never trained a donkey before, but we needed the money." I said, "Hey, we'll try him." So we took him home, and I attribute most of our success to our nativity about mules and donkeys when we first started. Because when we brought him home, he was a jack, and we just started training him like a horse. So I looked up the next mule and donkey show bill, and it said, we're going to do Western Pleasure and all these different events. So we trained him like a horse. We had him walk, trotting, and loping, and ready to go. We could ride him one-handed. And when we got to the mule and donkey show, we kind of found out that that hadn't been the case in the donkeys before. This was probably, 20, 25 years ago. And really, at that point in time at a mule and donkey show, with your donkeys, if you could lope 3 strides in any lead, any direction, you were the winner. So the fact that we had him working more like a horse just really launched our career in a hurry because he had a lot of talent and we had trained him that way. And then we just started getting more and more people sending us mules and donkeys. So eventually we just switched over, which is never what I thought we would be doing. But we have got the best clients and have had the opportunity to train some of the best animals in the industry. And we just absolutely wouldn't change it for anything. So now we've stayed in Oklahoma. We've got about 60 acres and a 15 stall barn and arena. We just kind of build things as we sell more stuff and we build on and do it ourselves. And nothing super fancy, but very functional. And most of my clients have been with me for 10 and 15 years, which is really awesome. And like I said, just super thankful for the animals we've gotten to train over the years.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you don't see a lot of forward donkeys.
Right.
It's just not super common. It's getting better because I feel like the education's out there more and people are like, oh,
Yes.
and I feel like the, it's interesting just the standard that people hold in their minds. Like I think before people like you and others got out there and actually showing what can be done with these donkeys, people just didn't even realize that it was a possibility. They're like, no,
Mhm.
it's a donkey. It doesn't do that. And so it's pretty fun to see you guys out there, getting some cool stuff done with these long ears that people just don't think can be done. I have a general opinion that, the mule and donkey world is about 20 years, maybe 30 years behind the horse world in standards of horsemanship and mulemanship. And and donkmanship, right?
I
Um,
absolutely agree with that. Yep, I do. I
so
hope I look every year, I think it gets better and better. And some of that I really like. I really like the people are starting to challenge themselves more because it seemed like when we first started, I would get very frustrated coming from the horse world that people just accepted this really low standard and and didn't want to be held accountable. And if anything was hard, people kind of quit. And I think that's gotten way better. The one thing I do love about the mules and donkeys being behind the horse world is I grew up showing the all-round animal, and quarter horse has become so specialized now. You've either got a Western pleasure horse or a reining horse or an English horse, and it's really fun for me in the mule and donkey world to be take the same animal and just show everything. Because most of the ones we're showing, they'll do halter, then they'll drive, then they'll jump and do English, and then they'll do Western pleasure and trail and reining, and and still run the speed events at the end. So I hope that stays. I really, really enjoy the versatility end of that. But I do think we're absolutely seeing things change kind of according to the horse world. Um, you know, you're
yeah.
right, 20, 30 years behind. So for sure.
Yeah, I love the all around mule. That's my goal in life because I want to have the same mule that I could go show if I wanted to. I could go work cows. I could go to a branding pen. I could go on a trail ride. I could go on an elk hunt. Um, do all the things,
Hmm.
and that's my goal. I think it's good for the mule mind to be well rounded like that, not get um, kind of kind of too specialized. But I definitely see some specialization coming. I see
Hmm.
it in different breeding programs and different training programs, what people are trying to get done. I see that. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens kind of like it has in the quarter horse world a little bit. But I think still, though, the average mule person is still an all-around person themselves. Yeah, they might go show at Bishop, but that's their only show all year long, maybe,
Hmm.
and the rest of the year they're trail riding or hunting or whatever. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. We're hoping if we go to Mule Days this year, we're hoping to maybe come back through Bryce Canyon and do some trail riding. We love the photos we're seeing. But that's the one place we haven't got to trail ride is out in Utah, and it'll be those same show mules that we take out there. So for better or worse, we'll see how they do. But
Yeah.
we don't do a lot of trail riding, mostly for the limit in time. It's just hard for us to get away and actually go trail ride. We used to trail ride a lot, but it just hasn't worked out for us. But we do take a lot of the mules over. My husband works for a guy that runs about 1,000 head of mama cows, and he'll take those same show mules over for the most part, and work cows with them, rope cows on them, and drag them into the trailer and round up and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it works out great, and sometimes it doesn't. But the mules are better for it each time. So yeah, I think it's a good deal.
So are you training and raising mules full time now? Is that your main
Yes.
gig?
Yeah, that's been my main gig for probably the last 20 years or so. So, and we don't breed a ton each year. I think people are surprised to learn that I ship semen on a lot of mares. We probably breed 60 to 80 mares, outside mares per year, but I only raise 2 to 4 a year. I am really picky about who they go to. And I get attached to every single one of them, which makes it terrible for me to make money because I don't want to let any of them go. And I want you to meet a standard before I let you have one. So
Yeah.
I don't sell very many bait. I rarely sell a weanling. I kind of like to wait till they're yearlings because I feel like if I have at least some sort of a foundation on them, then they have a much higher chance of remaining in a good home. And and always having a better life. So 2 to 4 is as many as I can do a good job on per year, and that means I full them out in a stall. I think a lot of the old time mule breeders really get onto me because I'm not having them out in the pasture like nature wants. But I'll tell you what, if you ever get a sick one, or you want to go to a show, or you want to go on an overnight trail ride, those mules need to learn how to be in the stall. And for sure, on these baby mules, when they learn that from the beginning, then it's just never a big deal. So I like to birth them in the stall. So if I have any troubles, if they have any trouble with the actual birth process or anything, I'm there to try to help. I like to keep an eye on them for a day or two. Then turnout is a huge part of my program. It's not like they just live in stalls, but I like to start them there. Then I'll start halter breaking them at 2 or 3 days old. I've got a really nice big paddock that all the mares and babies go out in together, and I will lead them every day from the stall outside, turn them out, and then catch them again and halter them and lead them back inside. And then when I bring them back inside at night, I usually tie them up with me right there because we're talking about a 2 or 3 day old baby, and I'll go around and pick up all their feet and rub them in a little bit and turn him loose. So, and that just makes such a difference. And it takes not a lot of time, but it keeps my hands on them. And I'll do that for at least the first 30 days. They'll get led every day, twice a day, and pick up their little feet and kind of keep my hands on them. And so we at least do that, and probably like trim their mane with the clippers so they get used to that. I don't do a lot of imprinting, but at least kind of those basics, the leading, the tying, pick up their feet, and the clipping. I like to kind of get on them pretty quick. But 2 to 4 is as many as I can do that on and get everything else that I need to do because I'm kind of a one-man show. My husband Dan helps me a lot, but he does have a real job. So he'll help me if I've got, a trouble one, or he's a little better with the rope if I'm teaching one to drag. Some of this ranch stuff is more new to me than it is to him. So I'll kind of save that for a weekend or an evening. But most all of the breeding and the brood mares and all that, I take care of myself unless I've got a big problem. So I've got cameras on him at night when they foal. So if I have a big foaling problem, he's there and I can wake him up. But usually he just wakes up in the morning and it's like, oh, there's a new baby. So, but that's as many. I think people are surprised to learn that that's as many as we raise per year, because I know a lot of breeders are doing a lot bigger numbers than that. But I just don't want to raise them like cattle. Like I just feel like it's very important to me that they get good homes. So that's we make part of our money that way, but more of our money comes in from the training and clinics, and I do a lot of judging, that kind of thing, and then just raise a few colts, but ship a lot of semen. So Ted pays for a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about old Ted, Clyde's Giant Fox. Let's talk about him because he has been a great ambassador for the donkey. I feel
Sure.
like he has really shown what donkeys can do, and even if people might not have heard of you or Dan, but
Right.
you say Clyde's Giant Fox, like, oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's maybe they saw your ad in one of the magazines or something, or
Mhm.
or just heard of him. But yeah, talk about old Ted. He's a pretty cool donk.
Sure. I just feel incredibly lucky that he was placed in our lives because we were kind of just starting out on our own, and he came from Dwayne and Samantha Francis owned him in Richards, Missouri, and we had just met them a few times through shows, and Samantha really wanted him to go to somebody that would really train him right and take care of him, and they had asked us if we would take him, and I said of course, and he just was great from the very beginning. I'd like to say that I'm just this super trainer, but he would make most people look good. He's just very kind, and it was just always easy from him from the beginning. We started him as a 3-year-old, and we showed him that first year in walk trot, and I think he was reserve high point in the walk trot. And then he was such a good loper. From there, we just went on and started showing the loping classes, and he never got beat again for the year end high point all around. So he's got. And he was just so versatile. He's got superior titles in 8 different events, everything from halter and driving to barrel racing and reining and Western pleasure. One of my favorite memories of him probably was one year out at Bishop Mule Days. In his prime, we went out, and he was so funny because we do this little thing when we run speed events, instead of just going in and running, so they know the difference that they're going to go fast rather than go in for reining or go in for a horsemanship pattern or something. We'll take them in the arena and turn them back to the left and then go run them, and they know when they turn back to the left, when they spin around, they're going to go run speed. So at Bishop Mule Days, where you run the pole bending, where we used to run the pole bending, was out on the track, and there was a chain link fence on the back of it, and he was so funny to see it happen with the donkey. But you'd spin him back to the left, and he'd get to high step in and bounce you off that chain link fence, and then he'd go run in the speed. So he won the pole bending, was world champion in the pole bending, and then the classes were so close together. I ran the pole bending in my show clothes, and his show bridle and show saddle and everything, and then I had 100 yards down the track to gather him a little bit in the face and send him on, and then went in and won the Western pleasure on him. So he's just so versatile and has really passed that on to his colts, but pretty incredible. And then this last year made him he's been the leading jack for NASMA for a decade. This was his 10th year to win it, which means all of his colts have accumulated more points than any other for the years. So we were pretty excited about that. That was an important goal for me, just because nobody else has done it. And that just for him, that seemed like a long time to keep that title. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
but he's amazing. He's always been easy, and he's got a funny little personality though. My husband has showed him a little bit, but he's always better if you just get along with him. We've won a million Western pleasure classes over the years, and he'll take he rides just like a mule or a horse. You push his hip and pick up his lead and all that kind of stuff. And I was sometimes my husband's had to get on him over the years because Ted was the easy one. So if I had to ride another young donkey or something, I'd put Dan on him. And but there were a few times I had to school Dan. If Dan would want to make him do something, Ted would just pick up the wrong lead or do something to mess with him for the whole thing. So I'd be like, nope, you can't do that. Pet him and ask him and get along with him. And he'll do whatever you want. So that's been kind of fun, but we still get him out. He retired sound, and we still get him out and give a lesson on him now and then because people think it's really neat, to be able to ride him around, and I think it's good for him. And sometimes if I just want to take a ride leisurely or something, I'll get on him because he sure hasn't forgotten anything. And we've always ran him with another horse gelding. I think that's been important for his mental state and longevity too. He's never had to be alone. So we've always ran him with another horse gelding, and they're great buddies. And so that's been great for him mentally. And we still treat him like a show animal. He comes in if the weather's a little bit bad or anything like that. He's in the barn and pampered. So, but all the collecting, I mean, just goes on with his great minded. It's going to be horrible for me to have to switch over to another Jack someday because I handle all the breeding and collection here. We save, not to get into anything crazy, but we save mare urine. So I don't really even need to have a mare in the barn when I collect them. I'll save urine from the mares when they're in heat and I freeze it in syringes. And when I need to collect him, I bring him into the breeding shed. I've got a certain halter I use on him. I bring him in a certain doorway, and I literally stand there and play on my phone and squirt some mare urine in his nose for about 15 minutes, and then he drops down and jumps the dummy, and I stick him in a stall and go process semen, and I could hand him to anybody to take back out to the pens. So he's really, really made things easy. When people call me with problems, I'm like, "Ah, I'm glad that's not my problem," because he's made things so easy. He's really been good, but
Yeah, I like what you said about keeping him with a gelding because, you know, I actually feel bad for a lot of jacks and studs
mhm.
that just live a life of confinement, and then people wonder why they're nuts, why they're just
Right,
crazy,
right.
to handle. And it's like, well, look at their mental state,
Mhm,
and I think letting them be a donkey, or a horse, whatever it is,
mhm.
first and foremost is the most important, and that's a game changer. So that's cool to hear that you guys do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really believe they're herd animals, and sometimes it makes things harder on us. Although we would be in that situation anyway because they buddy up in the trailer. That's the biggest problem that we deal with is how the mules and donkeys buddy up with each other at the shows, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of a thing when we take one away from the stall, we've got to take another one with it and things like that. But it just is so much better. There's ways to manage it, and it just works out so much better for the animals' mental health. I've got another young Jack, and he runs out with we call him the SEAL team. It's four gigantic 16 hand plus John mules, and he's lived with them his whole life. And if he gets out of line a little bit, they just thump him, and then everything's cool again. So it's taught him a lot, and it's kept him. I mean, he handles just like Ted does. He's quiet and easy, and
Hmm.
he's not gonna. He doesn't get out of hand. But they do so much of the training for me, and he's so much happier because of it. Because they play together all the time. They bite each other's legs and wrestle, and the worst thing we get is a few bite marks. And I have had people at shows be like, I can't believe you bring them to the show, with a little patch of missing hair or something. And I said, that's what you're going to deal with if they run together, especially the John mules. So I would rather they have a bite mark on their neck than be miserable locked in a stall 24/7. So and it's certainly not affected us in the show ring. So
Yeah, tell me about some of the herd dynamics. I think it's really cool, and I have a lot of my own experiences and opinions and ideas, but um, I see a huge mental imbalance with animals that don't have a real herd dynamic, particularly like I think especially at weaning time, you
mhm,
know. My favorite way to wean, and I want to hear your ideas too. But my favorite way to wean is put them out with other weanlings.
mhm.
A lot of people will maybe they take the mare away. Cool. I guess you're getting something done, or they'll take the baby away from the mare. Um, but then sometimes it's isolation after that, and I've seen some interesting things come from that, some interesting situations, and some of the healthiest animals I've seen is when they run together. And I've seen a lot of yours run together. You're posting stuff and doing stuff. So tell
Yes.
me about that.
Sure, all of ours run together. We try to keep with raising 2 to 4. That's a nice size group for my pen. So we normally, when I start weaning, I'll start pulling the mares out maybe one or two at a time. So when I get down to the end, I've just got some of the babies have kind of already been weaned, and then I've just got maybe one mare left to pull out. And then as soon as I feel like they're kind of figured that out for maybe 2 weeks to a month. So they'll be left in a pen together in the same pen that they're used to. I also feel that that's important. So they're used to their feeding schedule. We creep feed them, so they're already on grain and so forth. So they're not starving away from the mama's milk and all that. But I like to leave them together in that group. And then what I do is I've got another pen that normally has got some yearlings that I haven't sold yet. So I've usually got 2 or 3 yearlings. So after a month or so in that pen, I'll move them over in with those yearlings. And that's worked out really well for me. Even though the yearlings are bigger, they've been fine with the weanlings. So that's kind of what we do is wean them in a group. There is weanlings and then move them over with those older colts. And that seems to kind of give them something new to think about and create a new little dynamic and so forth too. So that's worked very, very well for us. The only thing you deal with that, I think, is a little more herd boundness, but it seems I have not found a way that you don't get that no matter what you do. So I don't know that that's a big detriment, but I do, mine probably are a little more buddied up when they first start out. But normally when I sell them, they're going as a single or something anyway. So then by the time they've kind of already got the confidence at my house, by the time they leave all their buddies and go somewhere new, that kind of seems to solve that problem or at least help it initially anyway. But I really like all of mine run together. I don't have anybody that's in solitary. All my show mules run together in groups. I've kind of got the Mollies and the Johns separated. Not always. I had a John that ran with the Mollies for a long time. That just wasn't a problem, and he died last year. But normally I kind of keep the Mollies and Johns separated just because it's worked out like that. When they're young, I don't bother with it. My yearlings and weanlings all run together. So, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how we do things. I just don't think they need to be alone.
Oh,
So,
they're herd animals, and I think a lot of
mhm,
people forget that they're herd animals, and they want them to be some I don't know what they want them to be, just like tough enough to deal with their own life, but
right.
they're herd animals. We're riding a herd animal, and that social structure is really important, and I think especially for the mentality, just the mental thing.
Mhm.
I like your idea about putting the weanlings out with the yearlings. It's kind of like sending your kid to high school. They're the freshmen,
Yeah.
and it's like
It's really worked out. I
grow
always
up.
hold my breath a little bit because of the size difference. This year, I've actually got a couple 2-year-olds. So the weanlings went in with the 2-year-old. Now they're Mollies, so they're not quite as rough as the Johns. The babies were Mollies or the babies were Johns and the older ones were Mollies. But I worried a little bit, and the littlest weanling went in there and just kicked everybody's butt. So it wasn't an issue, but I worried a little bit because of the size difference. But it just, one thing I found with the mules as opposed to the horses is they just figure out their place in their herd so much faster. When I've got to move around broodmares or horses, I always worry because the new fences and the new dynamics, and they corner each other up and kick more. And it's not that the mules never do that, but it seems like they're so much more aware of the subtle cues. They can pin their ears a little bit or give them a look or raise their leg rather than having a full blown, kicking match. It just seems like there's more of that. They do a little more running maybe than the horses do, but not the same, just pin them up in a corner and kick the crap out of them. So I've found that works pretty good. And I've also found if I get one that's super buddied up that sometimes I'll change them pins. And I just wouldn't do that with horses because you do take that risk. Every time you swap that herd in the horses, you take a pretty good risk. And I don't find that I have much trouble with that with the mules. Sometimes if I get one that's just so buddied up with another one, I'll just move them over to a different pen for a while, and they've still got friends in the herd and stuff, but maybe have to figure out they don't have to depend on that certain buddy quite so
Yeah.
much. But that has worked well. That's one of the biggest differences in turnout that I've seen between the mules and the horses is they just don't get in the same kind of wrecks, which is really nice.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll save you some vet bills.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
So, so I got a curious question for you, and I'd love to hear your insight. So, raising these babies, and I think it's really cool that you keep them usually until yearlings and sometimes 2-year-olds.
Mhm.
Talk about some of the different traits that you see. So, like when you have this weanling age mule,
Mhm.
do you see certain traits that will play in the future? Like, are you getting to where you can see a mule like, oh yeah, this is going to be maybe a good cow mule, or this is going to be a more of a trail mule type, or this is going to be a good competition mule. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, for sure. I do think you can see that coming up. One thing that has kind of surprised me, though, as opposed to the horses, because I grew up all horses all the time, is that I've had a few mule colts over the years that started out fine, and I handled them a bunch, and then get real standoffish and not want anything to do with me for a while. And that was kind of hard for me to take personal, not to take personal, because the horse babies, it seemed like if I had a gentle horse colt, it just kind of stayed gentle. And I've got one or two horse or mule colts over the years that have kind of went through a little phase over their late weanling, early yearling year where they wanted nothing to do with you. And then it surprised me how when that switch flips, they like completely come back around. So it's kind of taught me also though that the mules change so much with maturity. So to not necessarily give up on one that's really wanting to act wild or be kind of standoffish, that sometimes they just kind of go through this phase that I don't see so much with the horse colts. But you can definitely see the ones that kind of like that weanling colt that wanted to step up and be the boss over all the yearlings. I really think that he's out of kind of a foundation, more cowbred mare, and I expect him to be a little cowier the way he wants to kind of step up and be bold and kind of push them around. And I think a lot of that goes with their breeding too. We've bred some thoroughbred mares that I didn't think we would, but I've had real good luck with, and those seem to make a little more laid back kind of show, the show mules and so forth out of the thoroughbred mares. But they're you can kind of see that, like you said, out in the pen, that the thoroughbred colt is more laid back and kind of looks to the other colt to follow his lead and see what's going on. And you can definitely see the personality traits kind of step out, and which ones are more nervous, which ones figure out are more stubborn. You can, the ones that just don't want to give up to it, or the ones that you tie up and they'll paw for 3 hours instead of 30 minutes, things like that. But I have really learned over the years that it just takes the time, and they all mature slower than horses. And I think the Johns are the slowest to mature. And that I think people have a hard time with that, the waiting factor. Because I've had mollies that we've shown at 3 and 4 years old that you could almost put little kids on, and then those same bred, same handled, all that John mules, it seems to take until they're 8 or 9. So um, that can be a factor, I think, but definitely just slower to mature in general than horses. So don't panic if you've got one you're maybe not getting along with as a tiny baby. That a lot of them will come around. So
Yeah. Talk about do you see a lot of consistency in these mares that you're breeding? Like are they producing the same type of mule? Like because you've got a lot of mares that you've had a lot of babies out of.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
so tell me about the consistency you see from foal to foal, year to year.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of consistency to foal to foal. Sometimes we'll get a different color or something like that, but we don't pay a lot of attention to color. But it seems like the movement and the body type, especially, and kind of how they react to things, except for the difference between the Johns and Mollies. Sometimes I see a lot of that. But when we first got into the mules, everybody told me, oh, you just don't ever know what you're going to get. You just randomly breed this jack and this mare, and it's just a surprise every time. And I just didn't believe that coming from the horse world. And I still don't believe that. I can pretty much tell you what I'm going to have when I breed those mares and what those colts are going to like. You get an anomaly once in a while, but for the most part, yeah, I see a lot of consistency between those same crosses year after year,
Yeah.
between the mares I'm breeding. But I think that the quality on both ends is very important. On both sides. I mean, obviously, I think the jack's important, but the mares are 50% of the equation. So I think it's came a long ways. People are breeding better mares to the donkeys. When we first got into it, people would breed they would have a mare that was no good for anything else, and they're like, oh, we'll breed it to a donkey, and they'd call me, and the stud fee then was like $500 or $600, and they're like, oh, that's too much, so they'd breed it to their neighbor's jack with three legs pointing any direction and stuff, and then that's what they get. And I think that we even see that a lot with I'm not great at saddle fit because we haven't had many problems. Ted is a really good backed donkey, and especially breeding to some of the bigger, the thoroughbred and thoroughbred cross mares with the good withers. We're using pretty much all horse saddles on our mules, but they hold the saddle good. I don't know if you've seen that with the one you have yet or not, but
Yeah.
and we're not doing mountain riding. It would probably be a whole different thing if we were, going straight up and down and so forth. But especially in the arena events, we just haven't had many saddle fit issues with most of them because we're getting better backed mules, I think, too. So,
Yeah,
um,
Poppy, the mule I got from, we call her Poppy.
yeah.
Yeah, she's yeah, I love that mule. I'm gonna
Oh,
start her
good.
this
I'm so
summer.
glad.
Um, I'll be starting her this summer when I have a consistent like 2 or 3 months at home.
Yeah,
And I'm really excited. I'm gonna haul her this spring. She's gonna go to all the clinics with me and do the groundwork classes and stuff with me. And
that's
but
awesome.
I'm loving that mule. She's such a sweetheart. So tell me, well, while I got you, I might as well ask you.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of her siblings. Like, what kind of things do I expect when we start riding her? How's she going to
Yeah,
turn out, you think?
she has been, I can't tell you a ton because I have sold every colt out of that mare that has went, but they've all went on to really get along with them good. Most of them are show where I've kind of placed them in show homes because
Mhm.
those colts have been so nice. But I liked her so much that I kept the last one out of that mare. We lost that mare last year. We got that mare because she had been kicked out in the pasture and had a big knee, not by any confirmation fault, but she was low man on the totem pole and they had kicked her out with a big band of brood mares and she had like a partially broken jaw and a big knee. And but I take care of my brood mares like they're my kids, so we just always managed her and she was great, but it got to the point where she just wasn't sound enough it just wasn't fair to her to keep her around. So we did put her down last year, but I kept her last foal because I liked them so much. I had sold every other one of them out there and we'd never got to keep one. And she's been fantastic. She just turned 2 and we did she won, or she was reserve champion at Bishop last year in the in-hand trail as a yearling. And then we just took her out to the National Western and she won her halter class. And the ranch trail, they had duck decoys or geese decoys on the bridge and all kinds of scary stuff. And she just walked all the way through it. And I was a little concerned about the side pass because I don't do a ton of in-hand stuff. Normally, by the time I get to a side pass, I would be on their back, but I had worked with it on her because I'd seen in the pattern. And we got up to the log and I was worried about her doing it. And I barely had time to set my rope and looked over at her and she was just side passing down the logs. So maybe too smart. I was like, you could have waited on me, but I was happy that she did it. So she's been great minded so far. Things just don't bother her and she's really bold and friendly. And so I'm pretty excited to start her. I'll start her probably this fall. I kind of like to start them. If I'm going to keep them, I like to start them late in their 2-year-old year, but not very hard. I don't do a lot of round pen work. So I'm not talking about just driving one into the ground. And I'm like you, I like to do a lot of groundwork first. So I've been saddling her. My equine dentist comes in March. I want to get her teeth done before I bid her up much. I like to have their teeth done as 2-year-olds, and then we usually keep that on a 6-month program until they're 5 or 6. Because I just don't, there doesn't need to be any extra problems created, and that's a cheap maintenance
Oh
thing
yeah.
to stop any extra. So I've been hesitant I don't want to put a bit in her mouth until I get her teeth done. Like I said, my dentist comes in March, so but I've been saddling her and doing things like that with her and some in-hand trail stuff and have really, really liked her. So I'm excited to see what you do.
Yeah, I'm excited for her. Yeah, she's so cool. She's such a quiet mule too. Just so
Mhm.
she's got a great mind, and
Yeah.
I've ponied her all over the mountains, crossing water. Luckily she's so dang tall that the deadfall's no
I
big deal.
know.
So she'll be my mountain mule, be able to step over all that, that
Yeah, she
timber.
will. Yeah, I
So
expect her to get pretty big. The mare was 16 hands, and people really think that, you're going to take a 14 2-hand donkey and breed it to a big mare and get something in the middle, but he tends to add an inch or two. So I would say 16 to 16.2 range is what I would guess on her. So,
it's just too bad
um,
my legs are so short.
I know.
It's a good thing I'm mobile. I'm flexible. I can get up there.
That's right.
How was that mare bred? Sky's the one that keeps track of all. Sky can tell you, she can go out to our pen and be like, "Oh, this mule's bred this way, this mule's bred that way."
Sure, sure.
I just ride them, But
Yeah.
how was that mare? What was she a
Yeah.
thoroughbred mare or is she a quarter mare?
She was an appendix mare, so her mom was a thoroughbred, and then on the
Mm.
bottom or on the top side, she was an own daughter of invitation only, which is a very winning quarter horse Western pleasure
Mm.
type stud. So she's very like should be like Western pleasure hunt seat kind of bred. But like I said, I really try to fight that stigma because I get calls all the time. They're like, well, Ted only raises show mules. I want to trail ride. I'm like, well, it's the same traits that we're looking for. We want them to be quiet. We want them to be trainable. It's a lot more comfortable to trot along the trail on a good mover, that kind of thing. So really, to me, as far as the trail riding versus the show world, I like the bigger mules to show. I like 15.3 to 16.1 to show, and a lot of people don't want them that big. But other than the height, to me, we're breeding the what I want to ride on the trail is the same thing I want, in a show mule. So I think people get hung up because we take them to shows, but it's the same, I want all the same stuff on them. So
Well, you'll be able to use me as a testimonial because
that's great.
she's she's gonna be roped off of, cowboyed
Yeah.
off of, trail ride,
That's
packing.
awesome.
You know what I
She had
mean?
another sibling, but he didn't get quite as big. He sold on Chrome in the Canyon last year. Fournier's had him. He was towards the end of the sale, and I tried to buy him back a couple times and couldn't get him bought back. And then they ended up with him and had him through that sale. And a client of mine, he was only, I want to say he was only 4. I kind of thought he wouldn't bring as much through that sale because of his age. I just didn't think he would be quite broke enough for out there. And my client bid him up to 20,000 and he went on and brought like 30 or 33, and all they're going to do on him is hunt. So,
Yeah.
but same thing, we were going to bring him back and show him. We weren't worried about that,
Mhm.
but they liked him so much out there in the, doing what he did out on the trail, that's what they bought him for. So,
Heck yeah.
but I think that those mules, there's several people in the show world that also, most people that are showing don't have separate trail riding mules. And I think that's one thing that the people that haven't been in it long, or, or don't know, they see that and or they don't know anything about the show world and they just think, oh, that's a show mule and you can't trail ride them. But I haven't found that at all. Like I said, to me, it's this exact same qualities. The only thing I would change is if you wanted a shorter one, I would go with, but there's a lot of nice Western pleasure, shorter mares and stuff too. I just like, because we do the driving and the hunt seat and the jumping, those big mules really stand out in the show pens. So we've kind of bred some bigger mules, but you don't have to cross them that way, but you can
Yeah.
still for those bloodlines and stuff, and not, but they will, there's no reason why any of those mules can't trail ride. It's just what you expose them to.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Something that I would love to talk to you about is your competitive nature, and
Sure.
because I've always been competitive, and and I love the mindset of being a winner,
Yeah.
whatever it is you do. I don't care if it's a sport or if it's in your business or being a good husband or wife or a good parent or whatever, but just being a winner in everything you do. Um, and you guys exemplify that in your show world for sure, and in your breeding program. So, talk to me about that. I want to hear about your mindset. I want to know like how you guys think when you show up to a show, or how you're preparing, and everything
Sure.
that goes into being a winner.
Right. I think just there's a lot of time spent, and I don't know, whenever I guess I'm like you, whenever I've done anything in life, it just didn't seem like there was any reason to spend a lot of time on something that I didn't think I was going to be successful at. So, sometimes I get some flack for it. People will come up to me at shows and maybe I'm not as nice or can't spend as much time with them as I need to, but it's usually because I'm trying to get 10 head ready to go in the show pen with all of their amateurs. So, one thing I try to do is be really prepared ahead of time, really super organized. So I will kind of want I've got lists on lists. I really want everything organized and ready to go down to the last little detail. um I I don't ever do anything good enough, which, like, just what I'm saying is, oh, it's good enough. That's good enough. I don't ever do anything that way, which sometimes gets on my clients and especially my husband's nerves, because he'll be like, nobody else is going to do it. I'm like, I don't care if anybody else. Well, like going to Denver, for example, I just, it was very cold here, but I've got a nice barn. I've got good blankets. I can absolutely take care of the mules in the cold, but the body clipping, I do not have it in me to take animals to a show in front of people and not have them fully prepared. So just like that, I guess, that takes a lot of hours, and I'm going to spend a whole lot of hours after the fact blanketing and and keeping everybody warm and bringing them in out of the barn and so forth. But I can't. It's not in me to bring them, not quite ready. So. I think the devil's in the details. I spend a lot of time thinking about the details and being prepared and kind of going down the list and see each class that we're going to show in, making sure I've got the right bit, the right bridle, all their tack is set up the way I want. And then the preparedness, for sure, that we've been through everything. A lot of times that means you get up at 3 a.m. and ride in the middle of the night because that's the only time the arena's open, things like that. It just, the details and the spending the time on the extra things makes a big difference.
So, what made you that way? Did you grow up that way? Did your parents push you? Were your parents
No,
like
I think
that?
I've kind of always pushed myself. I think I've always been pretty type A, and I did, if I was going to do 4-H, I was going to be the best in 4-H. I did a lot of speech contests and things like that. So I've kind of always pushed myself. We had a house fire when I was 12, and I lost my mom and little brother. So I kind of became the head of the household per se for a while, and kind of help raise my younger brother. So, I mean, maybe that was part of it. I always wanted to be good at things and do a good job and make my dad proud. But
Hmm.
even before then, I was pretty type A. So, um, they make fun of me that I'm alone in the barn. I'm alone most of the day because my husband works and so forth, just me and the horses. I don't know. I talk to myself, I hum to myself, maybe just a little OCD. So that's probably just in me. But
Yeah, I sing to myself all the time. And you probably
yeah,
seen those guys' stupid videos scaring me when I'm singing.
right. Dan will look up and he's like, you're humming again, right? I'm like, yeah, sorry. But no, I if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. And I think that was the hardest part for me getting into the mules and donkeys coming from the horse world, because when I first, it's changed definitely, but when I first got into it, everything was just kind of good enough. This is all we expect.
Mm,
They're a mule and donkey. What else do you expect? And that really hit me wrong, because I thought these animals are capable of so much more than they're being asked of. And so I really, really enjoyed that over the last couple of decades, watching how much the animals and the horsemanship has improved, because that was super hard for me. And we still run into it a little bit at the shows. Compared to the horse world, the mules and donkeys always get what's left over. So if we go to a stock show or a big horse show or something like that, it always seems like, well, you don't get your time in the warm up pen, or you get the worst stalls, or things like
yeah.
that, because you're just mules and donkeys. So that part is hard for me to deal with, because I'm like, no, they're mules and donkeys. We've worked harder on them to get here, but I want them to really have equal time, because I think they deserve that. But we've just always I always have dotted my I's and crossed my T's, and it makes me they give me a hard time. My crew gives me a hard time. My crew being my clients and my husband give me a hard time at the shows, because they know, like, halter morning, I'm going to be really neurotic. That's usually the first class we show, and it's getting everything just right, everything groomed right, everything down to the pin right. And then once we show that first class, I'm okay. Then I'm okay to deal with, but nobody wants to deal with me before we show that first class. So they've learned to just kind of stay out of my way and let me go through my deal, and everything works out. And a lot of that's brought on myself too, because of the number of animals we take to the show. It would be much easier if we only took 2 or 3 head. I think mine have to be a little broker at home and things like that, and how we prepare them, because they don't get the same amount of time. I can't spend the same amount of time when we take 10 head animals to the show. There's just usually just my husband and I, and I've got good clients that have got really good horsemanship and stuff too, that can help me ride, but I can't lope everything around for 3 and 4 hours. I've got too many. So they need to, and I ride them at home that way. When I ride them at home, I like to walk them a couple laps each way. And while I'm walking them, I might mess with their face a little bit or bend them around, but then we kind of go straight to work. I don't go lunge them or work them in the round pen for hours before I ride them. Like, I need to be able to take them out in the pen, get on them, walk them around and let them get warmed up a little bit, and then go to work. So, because that's how it needs to be at the show. I don't have that kind of time to warm them all up. So if I can get through them 10 or 15 minutes right before their class, that's what they're going to get. And then I need to be able to put my amateur client on them, or my youth kid, and they need to be able to go show them. So I try to mirror that at home as well, thinking about what it's going to be like at the show, and kind of gear my program that same way at home, because I think a lot of people, that's what gets them in trouble at the shows, is they're like, well, I'm a little bit scared, so maybe I've ran them around the round pen for 30 minutes, and then I've messed with them on the ground another 20 or 30 minutes, and then I've got on and long trotted them for 30 minutes. Well, that might work if you have one animal, but as many as we're taking to the show, they can't. They need to know that I'm going to get on them. They're expected to do their job, and then I'm going to leave them alone. And that's worked pretty well for us. I feel like we've had several that have showed real late in the careers and not got sour, and they know what's expected of them, and it works out most of the time. So,
Yeah, I like to be prepared, and then you can show up and enjoy the show, or
yes.
enjoy the competition, or whatever it is. I come from a rodeo background. I rode saddle bronc horses, and the real training happens at home, happens before you ever get there, and
Mhm.
then I think you can have it's a better experience there. And I think it's the same thing for like your meals you're talking about, because I've seen we don't show a lot.
Mhm.
We've been to Bishop and just played
Yeah.
around,
Mhm.
and we've been to some of these other little meal shows just goofing around. But I would never say I'm a showman at all.
Sure.
Um, but so coming there like that and just kind of watching and just kind of being there for the fun of it. I see a lot of people that are drilling on their mules, like pretty
Mhm.
hard. It's like, you know, I think maybe that's the first time they worked at them,
Right.
like
Right.
they're trying to cram everything in, 20 minutes before the show or something. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair for the animal. And then you can see if your standard is like that, how your mule could get pretty sour of a show
Right.
or
Mhm.
anything. It's
Mhm.
anything. The same thing for me. Like, so my version of the show or showing is when I show up to a branding pen.
Hmm.
For me, branding season is go time. Like this is the real thing now. This is what we're doing. And and I know if I've put my time in or not. Right there in that branding pin, it tells me, hey, yeah, you've done your work, well done, or dude, you didn't do enough, man. You are
Right.
behind here. Like, and but I want to be able to put that work in so that when I do show up, it goes good. So, like for me, prepping for branding obviously is, I've roped on them. I'll drag if I've never drug a calf, I've dragged logs or tires around or whatever, and I've prepared so that when I show up there, hey, I gotta have fun. I get a rope now.
Yeah.
It still can be intense because it's like, especially in a branding pin, because it's like the real deal. Like, you have to do it.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's not really optional. Like, hey, we got to get the work done. Um, but yeah, that preparation part I think is so important to be ready before you get to whatever it is you're into, whatever it is you're doing.
Hmm.
I remember I told this story on the podcast last week, so this will be old news for my listeners, but I'll tell you. So I rodeoed for Louis Field, and five-time world champion cowboy, great guy. And when I was rodeoing for him in college, he would make us run around the arena, like do laps and laps around the arena, and then he'd call us out and tell us to jump up on the chute, pull down our saddles. I was a saddle bronc rider. Pull down the saddle, get on, nod your head, like minimal time. And it used to, in the middle of it, it would drive me crazy. Like, dude, I'm out of breath. I'm so tired. Now, nod your head, go. And I didn't understand until I really got into professional rodeo, where maybe you get a re-ride and they run that horse right back in,
Hmm.
or another horse right back in. So you just got off this bronc, you're huffing and puffing, re-ride, saddle up. And by the time, you're saddled up, it's your turn to nod your head.
Right.
And I remember sitting on the back of the chutes one day, doing this thing. I'm like, oh, that's why he had us do this. Because I felt good. It's like we did so much training that I wasn't gassed. I wasn't out of air.
Hmm.
And I think you can liken that, being prepared for anything,
Yeah.
the show world, whatever it is. So I think that's pretty cool how much work you guys put in at home so that you can be successful at the show.
We try. They will. I will say though that the mules and donkeys will humble you. There is just no substitute for the hauling. So sometimes, no matter
Yeah.
how much work we do at home, and the donkeys even more so than the mules, I had kind of forgotten because, of course, we hauled Ted, and I had several other donkeys over the years that I was very successful with. And then my program just switched a little bit. I ended up with, I think, because we were raising so many mule babies, and we just went we I didn't even have a donkey to show for a while, and then the last 3 or 4 years I've had donkeys again, and I had kind of forgotten, like, that birthing process. We kind of started them like Ted again as 3 year olds, and man, that 3 and 4 year old year reminded me that how much I appreciated the end result. So because
Yeah.
just calling to the pen, I mean, you get in there, and at first you might only be able to make like a 20 or 30-meter circle in the middle of the pen. You can't even get anywhere near the wall. And that's just how, you just have to haul to enough pins. And it's nothing that I can specifically work on. They just finally see enough pins. This last batch of donkeys that I took to Denver, they're 6 this year, and we started them as 3. And we just don't get much time in the pen at the National Western. And they all went over the scary bridge. They all went, right out on the wall and showed. I've got enough of them that one of my amateur clients shows one of them. She got along great. And it always reminds me when they do well. I have to keep in the back of my mind what that starter period looks like, because I think that discourages some people too. And the mules and donkeys are a little tougher with the change in environment. When I showed horses, I mean, of course, you had to get them hauled and get them seasoned, but it seems like the mules and donkeys are harder to haul and season, especially with the indoor pens. I have more trouble, and of course, I don't have an indoor pen here at home. I've got just an outdoor arena, so that may be part of it too. But I think it takes the mules and donkeys a little more time to get comfortable in those bigger indoor pens that we show in. So,
No, I agree. I see a huge difference in that. Like when I'm hauling new mules to clinics and stuff.
mhm.
And I'm weird. I think about stuff all the time like this. I'm like,
Yeah, I
why
agree.
is
Me
that?
too.
How come it's so easy with a horse, but mules don't?
Yes.
And here in Utah, we're really blessed. We have a lot of wild horses and we got a lot of wild donkeys. And so I've spent a ton of time observing these wild donkeys.
Oh, that's
Their
neat.
their home range, like their area of travel is significantly smaller than the horses.
Hmm.
The horses, it's nothing for them to, they'll travel 20 miles in a day. no
Right.
problem. Like they'll just a lot of times if you spook a herd of horses out here, they'll be 5 miles away really
Wow.
quick. Just gone. They're just gone. You're not going to see that herd for a little while. Where the donkeys, you might spook them and they might run off 100 yards and then stop and turn around and look at you.
Right.
They don't travel crazy far. Their radius is really small. Like I don't know the exact mileage of it, but I would probably argue like a 10 mile, radius. I mean, it's really small. They just don't go very far. And so I think we can liken that to our mules, right? Where they're homebodies. They really are. They're like,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
they get very comfortable in their area and they like that. And whereas the horses just travel so much more.
Yeah. We've had one or two of the year over the years, we just couldn't break of it. We had one in particular that I bought for a client and she was so broke. I mean, as a young mule, like as a 3 and 4 year old, you could do anything with her. We took her to some extreme trail things and she'd just do anything. And then one of my other clients had a very famous father, Andy Anderson, who was actually the quarter horse world show vet and so forth for a long time. And he got brain cancer later in life. He'd always trained reining horses and he got to coming down to my house and riding that mule, and that mule would take care of him. But if you took her, and she did great at Bishop outdoor pen, if we took her someplace like Houston, and we fought with her for 2 or 3 years trying to get over it because she was so nice, and she would make you look like you had never swung a leg over her. Dan's got 2 or 3 classes where it looked like feet on the dash and, both
Yeah.
hands trying to stop her. And it made it look like you had done no homework at all. And like I said, she was the brokest thing ever. The amateur client went on her out at Bishop. And then as soon as we'd go to an indoor pen, she just could not, it didn't matter how much we got her in there. And look, she just did not work. So we ended up selling her for a trail riding mule.
Yeah.
So because that was really comfort and that's important too, I think, is finding a mule that suits what you want to do, because sometimes as much as you want it to happen, that's what you want to do for them is just not what they were meant to do or what they're mentally prepared to handle. So I think that's important too, trying to, and that's such a hard call to make, when it's one that you're just not getting along with, that maybe they just would be much better suited for a different job or a different program. We had one mule that has got all the talent in the world, and I absolutely know we're getting ready to get beat by him in the future, but he was one that has a really deep bottom, and he's one that's always going to need loped for a couple hours before you show him and so forth. And like I was talking about earlier, that's just not, that just doesn't work for our program. And we sold him to another trainer, and he had some great placings out at the National Western, but he had half the number of animals to ride that we did
Yeah.
and could spend the more time with him. And that's what that mule needed. So I think that that's important with no matter what job you're doing, is trying to, maybe know when to call it and find something different, and then everybody's happier. So,
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's so many people out there that, oh, I'm not sure if this is the mule for me or this is the mule for me. And the other thing to add to that equation is, hey, maybe you're not the person for that mule.
yes, that was the case with this mule. Is
Yeah.
he's a great big powerful mule, and like I said, he's got more talent than almost anything I've ever raised. It killed me to let him go because I know what's, like I said, he's getting ready to win a whole bunch of stuff. But he also was a very, just a little more difficult mule to get along with, and I am to the age in my life and the point in my life where I don't want to really ride a hard one every single day, and he
Mhm.
and the mule knew it too. So
Yeah.
it's been good for both of us. We weren't fighting with him this round, and the other trainer got along with him great and is going to have a lot of success. And I do think that that's important, is just trying to find the right match, and knowing that, I mean, it's not a big failure. That's a smart thing to do. It's not a failure if you've got to find a different mule or that mule finds a different job. Life's short, so at some point, it's not good for the mule or the person to keep fighting that
Well,
battle.
that's cool that you can recognize that though yourself, because and I'm coming at it from a competitive side, of just wanting to have success all the time.
Yes.
And then, you have to put your ego in check. And I've had to do
Mhm.
that, and it's hard.
Mhm.
Especially for me, it's hard because not only do I expect myself to be the best, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, everybody else has put me on that pedestal too. So
Yes.
like, oh,
Yes.
Ty Evans, he's supposed to do, and I'm like, hey, you know
Right.
what? Oh, there's that saying that there ain't a horse that can't be rode or a cowboy that can't
Yes.
be throwed. People think that's just bronc riding deal. No, no, no. Think about it deeper. Like
Mm,
sometimes you're not the person to fit that animal. Somebody
mm,
else will, though. Somebody else will fit that animal and have success.
mhm.
Um, and I remember that. My grandpa, he was famous for, he said that all the time, and he was saying it to me back in my bronc riding days. So that's why I likened it to. But now I liken it to mulemanship and
Yeah.
just life, that, there's just, you just can't do everything. And
Mm,
there's just some mules that I realized that, you know what, I can't do it. And it could be for various reasons. Like you're talking about this mule, it comes down to what you want to do. Like,
mhm.
you know, uh, at some point there's some mules that, honestly, I just don't want to.
Right.
It's not necessarily that I can't,
Yeah.
but because of my attitude, maybe I don't want to.
Hmm.
That nips it right there.
Yeah.
If you don't have the desire, it's really hard to be successful at
Hmm.
anything, whether it's
Yeah.
riding a mule or business or family or whatever it is. If you don't want to do it, it's going to be really hard to be good at it.
Yeah. And the dread, I like to, it's so funny. I was talking to another trainer and we were just talking about kind of the order of how you ride things. And I said, I like
Yeah.
to ride my bad ones first because then I don't dread it all day. And I don't have much for bad ones now, but in different parts of my career, if I had, or even that one that I just sold, I like to have them out of the way and I've got it done. And then I just don't dread it. And the whole rest of my day
Yeah.
seems better. And he went exact the opposite. He said, heck no. He said, you ride your good ones first. He said they're going to get better faster and they're not going to buck you off and all that. He's like, if that bad one wrecks you right off the beginning, you won't run a ride all your good ones. So I said, well, that's a good way to look at it too. So it's just funny how different people, you kind of
Yeah.
look at it differently through the thing because I kind of like to get my ones that are having a bigger problem knocked out first and then I just feel like the rest of my day is easy, but he was the exact opposite. He's like, no, those good ones, you spend your time on those and they're just going to keep getting better and better. And so
Yeah.
just a
Sky's
different philosophy.
back when I was training for the public, Sky's dad, Larry, he gave me some great advice and I applied it and it was great. But, I was training for the public. I would write everybody else's first. And
Mhm,
then, at the end of the day, you're tired. And I
mhm,
would end up not writing my own.
mhm,
So he's like, no, 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 ride your own first. Ride your mule first. Because you have integrity. You're going to write everybody else's because you have to. Like it's your
mhm.
job,
That's true.
and I'm a man of integrity. If I tell you I'm going to write it, I'm going to write it. So
Mhm,
I don't care how tired I am, how miserable I am. I'm going to write it. I'll do the thing. So yeah, I started doing that. Ride my own first, and that was like my time to hone my skills. And I
mhm.
felt like my skills just exponentially climbed because I'm riding my own, and I really wanted to ride my own, and I would experiment and I'd have fun and I'd try this and I'd try that. Whereas the ones I was training, I was a little bit more lined out and like, all right, well, I better just stick to what I know
Right.
instead of experimenting. I would just stick to what I know here and try to do a good job.
Mhm.
But yeah, that kind of changed the game for me quite a lot doing that. So
Oh,
yeah, it's kind
that's
of the
good
opposite,
advice.
but yeah, it
That's
worked
really good advice because I'm very guilty of that. Yeah, my owner never is broke because they always
out.
wait on those. Nope, that's really good advice for sure.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
worked out for me pretty good. So.
And I look back, I'm sure you do too. I think about ones I've had in the past and I think, gosh, if I'd have known then what I know now,
Oh yeah.
because I am huge like you are about the constant learning. I think I do a lot of judging and the judging, if even if you're not going to be a judge, I recommend if you have any, even if you're not in the show world, I think there's just so many more things. People get so caught up in, do you have the right saddle or if am I wearing the right outfit or blah blah blah. And when you actually go to one of those judging clinics and listen to what we're really looking for, and especially if you have to do it and you're on the spot and you realize the short amount of time you have to make good decisions, and I think most judges want to make good decisions, that none of that stuff ends up factoring in. But I've got one that we show now, Pistols and Posies, and she was out of the first Ted crop, and we sold her to Dwayne and Samantha Francis right away as a client, and but I was bound and determined I was going to make that first crop work. And she was maybe not quite as talented of a loper as some of them as I'd had, but I was going to make it work, and we won a lot on her. But I kind of wrecked her lope. I just I made her uncomfortable with it, and I messed her movement up a little bit, and she's 12 this year, and I've recognized that. I recognized it pretty early that this was a me problem, not a her problem. But it's taken me several years. But I feel like now, like we won one of the pleasure classes out at the National Western Honor, and that was kind of a big deal for her because she's been excellent in all the patterns. But it really wasn't her shortfall. It was the way I tried to push her and make her kind of like we talked earlier, make her fit that mold, and I wanted it in a hurry because I felt like I needed to prove those first babies. But I just think now if I'd have done things just a little differently, I could have saved myself the last several years putting her all back together. And mentally, she's terrific. It wasn't like it, blew her up, but it just I could have made her so much better if
Oh
I'd have
man.
known then what I know now. So
Yeah, there's always those. I have so many of those. I got piles of mules in my mind that I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. If
right.
only I could go back, just please forgive me. Okay, I was
Yep.
just a dumb kid, all right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
but also those mules served as stepping stools of learning so that
Oh,
I
for
can help
sure.
so many more mules. I
Mhm.
used to have a lot of guilt
Mhm.
for just so many screw ups that I've had, so many dumb things. But now I look back and I'm actually kind of glad I made those mistakes. Especially for me teaching clinics because you can imagine how many people want to argue their case of things that I already know don't work.
Right.
And I want to say, please take it from me. I've made that mistake. I've
Uh-huh.
been there. I
Yeah.
promise you, I've done that thing that you think is so great, and it's not going to work. I
Mhm.
promise you. They
Mhm.
want to argue their case. I'm like, well, you're going to have to learn on your own too. I think it's better to learn from my mistakes than your
Mhm.
own. You know?
I get frustrated, and I think that's kind of the type A is I will answer kind of any question anybody has, but when they want to argue with me or whatever, I'm like, then why did you ask me? That kills me. I'm like, why did you, if you already knew the answer and knew you had the best answer, then why did you ask me? So sometimes
Yeah.
I have to check myself there.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I would
Well,
like to give some more clinics and so forth. You do such an amazing job. I never know what I'm going to talk about, and then I'm always in awe that anybody wants to listen to me talk. So I think that's the that's the hard part for me.
no, it'd be good because there's not a lot of education in the mule world about
Right.
showing
Hmm.
and the standards that you have. It's interesting. So I'm the type of person, when I see a winner, and I see the success they're having and whatever, a winner could be anything in life.
Hmm.
That could be, I'm not just talking showing. I'm not just talking sports or something. I'm talking, hey, they're a winner as a father or they're a winner as a husband or, whatever it is. And, I look at those people and I want to know what they're doing. I want to know, hey, well, what makes you tick that way? How come you're successful? I talked about my coach, Lou Phil. I talk about him all the time. He was such a mentor to me. He was a champion.
Hmm.
And what made him a champion? What did he do? And he had all kinds of ethics that I strive to live towards. Not just ethics of winning and being a champion, but as a good human being and
Hmm.
faith and his belief in God and his testimony and just everything. And it always amazes me when there's people out there, they want your success, but they don't want to do what you've done to get it.
Right, right. I'll never
That's
forget. We were at a big 4-H show once, and there was like, I mean, it was obviously a long time ago, 30 years ago, but there were probably 40 head of horses in the trail, and I had a young horse. I usually had a young horse I was riding, and it took all afternoon to run it, and we were all done like eating lunch by the time they announced the results. And they read off the results, and I was second, and I was so excited. I was second. I'd won all that, and I had a great grandpa. Like he taught me so much. But I ran to tell grandpa I got second in that class, and he said, gosh, he said, that's great. He said, if you'd have tried a little harder, you could have been first. So I've never
yeah.
forgotten that. I was probably,
Yeah.
somewhere between 10 and 12. And yep, I've never forgotten that. If you'd have tried a little harder, you probably could have been first. So that stuck with me. And what I've really found I didn't believe when I was younger, but I really do now, is the people that you surround yourself with is so important.
Mm.
I think people, if they get a little defeated or they have a bad show, it's so easy to find somebody else that's had a bad show or a little defeat and make all the excuses in the world with each other. And I think you find that the people winning in general are hanging out with other people that are also winning in general. And instead of kind of wallowing in that and the world's against me, or, I'm just never going to be able to do that, it's finding out, why did I make that mistake and how how can I not make it again, and what can I do to get better? And I think that kind of mindset is really makes a difference. And like I said, the people that you surround yourself with has such an effect on your mental state through your whole life. Whether it's what you're doing on a Friday night, or, if you're going to put that extra practice in, or, or do that extra thing, I think the people that you surround yourself with make a big difference for that.
Oh man, so many things come to mind with that.
Mhm.
For me, whenever I see a winner or a champion, what did they do to get there? Like, how did they get there? If they're a great horseman, how'd they do it? If
Mhm.
they're a great husband, how'd they do it? If they're a winner in their sport, how'd they do it?
Mhm.
I love to study champions in whatever sphere of life. What
Mhm.
I don't like is like what you're talking about. If I'm hanging out with people and they're whining about the winner, I'm in
Mhm.
the wrong circle.
Yeah.
If they're complaining about, oh, well, they won, oh, well, they, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, this is a group of people that'll never win.
Mhm.
This is not the group of people I want to be around. I want to be around people that are like, did you see how good they did? Oh yeah, all right. Well, we got to step it up. We got to, if
Mhm.
we want to win, we better check ourselves here and we better work at this and go back to the drawing board and, try harder and be
Yeah.
better. You become who you hang out with.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's important for people to realize that, you know.
Mhm.
One of the people that I wish I could have met. Do you know who Tom Dorrance is? You ever heard of Tom
Yes.
Dorrance?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I never got to meet him, but I've been around a lot of people that were around him. One of my mentors is Martin Black, and Martin Black spent a lot of time with Tom Dorrance. And I've told this story many times, but I always bug Martin to tell me about Tom, because this is a guy that's successful, right?
Right.
Martin's successful and Tom Dorrance is successful. These are two successful men. I want to know as much as I can. Like, how did they get their success? How did they become great horsemen,
Mhm.
great stockmen, all the things, great cowboys?
Mhm.
And one of the things that was fascinating to me is Martin would say, whenever he was around Tom Dorrance, and anytime he or other guys would maybe the conversation shifted towards talking negatively about somebody, Tom Dorrance was so good at just subtly changing the subject. Always positive, always
Mhm.
optimistic, always uplifting, a winner's mindset. And he said, the interesting thing was he could do the same thing with horses.
Mhm. Yeah,
Anytime the horse
that's
got in
great.
trouble, anytime a horse got in trouble, got a little bothered, Tom Dorrance, he could just change the subject and help the horse out. And when he told me that story, it's just stuck with me because, in like what we're talking about, you can get around people and they're talking negatively
Mhm.
about a situation or somebody else that won
Mhm.
or something else, and that's just not the circle. That's not the circle to be in if you want to be a champion. It's never going to work. And the other thing to remember is it can be lonely at the top.
Mhm.
Like
Very,
when you do
yes.
win, you actually find out who your real friends are.
Yeah.
You really
Yeah.
do. Um, yeah, when I met you actually, you came out to judge that trainers challenge. Remember that a long time ago?
Yes. Yeah. In New Mexico. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that was just a fun little deal and not that big of a deal, but it was interesting. I won that and then um how many people were kind of mad that I won it, It
And
was
there was no, I mean, not, I remember that, and there just wasn't. And I kind of went into it, I, I don't know. I really have learned to appreciate, because of the judging, I think, all different types of horses, different types of way of doing things and so forth. I kind of judge all different breeds. And so I'd really went into it with, I mean, your reputation preceded you, but it just was not hard to, when you sit there and watch what was going on, to be able to make the decision of who should have won that contest. So I think that that's, but that's the problem with social media, is everybody's kind of woven life down to these 10-second clips of things.
yeah.
And, anybody that sat out there for all of those hours and watched that competition would have judged things the same way. So, But the same thing, we take the same kind of thing as, well, of course they won. They always win. Well, what they don't see is, all the hours and years of, or if, because, we'll get crap for, maybe having some fancy tack or something like that, but it's all we've ever done. It's all we spend our money on. I mean, it's all we do. We don't go on vacation. We actually went to spend some time with my husband's family in Alabama at Christmas, and we're gone for 5 days. And we got to thinking back, we've been married 25 years. And that's maybe the only second time in 25 years we've ever traveled with no horses.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think, people don't understand that. I live in a barn apartment.
Mhm.
We just kind of, as we've built things over the years, when we bought our place, we bought bare land. And, as we sell some stud fees or sell a colt or something like that, we build something else. So when we moved to this place and bought the land, we had to have the barn first for the horses. So we built the barn and lived in a trailer house, for a travel trailer, for 10 or 15 years. And then finally, this was supposed to be my office, and we got tired of the travel trailer. So we just finally made a barn apartment. But I
Yeah.
don't think, but that's all that's been important to us. So I think that, that's what people don't see when they just see you at the top. I don't, it looks very glamorous, whether it's the training challenge or whatever, you just get handed the trophy and get the accolades, but they don't see that, just like you guys live out of a suitcase, 3/4 of the year. And that's not easy, especially with kids. But that's what you've dedicated your life to. And I think that people don't understand that a lot of the people at the top of no matter what sport they're doing, there's a lot of other things that you give up to be able to be at the top of whatever you're doing. So I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, there's always sacrifices to winning for sure, or being successful at whatever you do, anything
Mhm,
doesn't matter. So,
mhm,
well, this has been awesome talking to you. It's been awesome. I just love it. So, at the end of all my episodes, I always ask my guests if they'll share a word of advice. It can be life advice, horsemanship, mulemanship, family, faith, anything. What piece of advice would you like to give people going down this road of life?
Sure. I think in general that you're never going to regret doing a little bit extra. And I kind of look at that through all of
Mm,
my life, whether I walk outside and it's cold and I think, as something as simple as, "Oh, I'm just going to clean 3 stalls and then go in and warm up." And I'm like, no, I'll clean five. And everything I do, I kind of think, well, if I'll do just this little bit extra now. So I think, whether it's, the mule training or in life with your husband or wife or your kids, you're never going to regret, and a little bit extra. So I think I can kind of take that with almost any part of life, is just don't be afraid to do the little extra. You're never going to be sorry that you did it.
that's awesome. I love that advice. That's a winning mindset right there. Just do a little extra. You won't regret it. And it's true. Like I can't think of anything that, when I've done a little bit more
Yeah.
of anything. Just all right, well, maybe I should spend a little more time with my daughter. Maybe I
Mhm.
should spend a little bit more time on this mule just right here. Maybe I should just brush him a little bit longer, and or
Mhm.
whatever. You could, I mean, there's so
Yeah,
many
it works
examples.
for anything, really
Yeah,
does. Yeah.
just do a little bit extra, and yeah, you won't regret it. That's so good. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's really been fun. So I hope we get to, I wish you guys need to break out for a few more shows. Those girls would love it. And then we get to see
Yeah,
them. So,
Ellie, Ellie she's the show girl for sure.
yeah.
She would really like it. And so I see different things changing in the coming years and prioritizing our time a little different in the coming years. And because she does enjoy it. My thing is, I love cowboying and I love trail riding and I love packing, but Ellie, she likes to go to a show. She likes to go to a barrel race. It's just different. So, yeah, you'll probably see us around a little bit more,
I
goofing
hope
off,
so.
having
We've
fun.
always got a couple good ones that we're usually got loaned out to youth kids. So if she wants to come try it, she's always welcome.
Oh yeah, yeah, that'd be great. So, well, Tabitha, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Heck yeah. To all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's a blessing to have you. So thank you so much. A big shout out to our sponsors that make this episode free for all of you guys. We got Roman Home Tents, Colt Saddlery, Diamond W Enterprises, Mules and More Magazine, and Western Mule Magazine. If you guys run into any of those people, tell them thanks. And if you'd be kind enough to leave us a comment or a review, we'd love to hear from you. And you can always find our information at tsmules.com. And Tabitha, maybe real quick, tell them how they can find out more about your program and your training and what you do.
We've really gotten kind of reliant on Facebook. You can find us at Signature Equine on Facebook and then Clyde's Gallant Fox on Facebook. And he also has a website, just clydesgallantfox.com. So you can find us there. But yeah, social media is the easiest. Just upload the picture and click, and you can keep everybody updated. And then if you need to get hold of me personally, you can always get me on my phone, which is on all of that stuff. So
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much, you guys. God bless you, and we will see you down the road.
thank you.